Thanks, Andrew. Thank you so much. I am just going to try sharing my screen and once confirm that it's all good.
While we're doing that, I should mention there should be a Q&A button, which I'm not seeing, but I hope you're seeing. So we'll come back to that later. But if there is a QA button, please feel free to put in questions during the talk, and I'll go through them at the end of the talk. And if the button is not there, like I heard it had problems a couple of weeks ago in an ACTA session, we'll find another way to do the Q&A afterwards. But over to you now. Thanks.
Thanks. Just can I clarify that the slides okay and you're able to see my slides?
Wonderful. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. As Andrew introduced, my name is Dr. Swarna Vishwanath. I'm a research fellow at the School of Public Health. And today I will be discussing a project that we undertook in 2024, and that focused on developing a best practice guide for registry-based trials. So I would also like to acknowledge, like Andrew, that we are meeting on the unceded lands of the Kulin Nations. I pay my respects to their elders past and present. So this is the core team from our school that contributed to this project, and I'm presenting this work today on behalf of the entire team. There is no way we could have completed this project in 1 year and on time without contributions from everyone. So I just wanted to acknowledge that at the start. So to provide a bit of context to this work, there is currently a gap between the high quality evidence that is generated from randomized control trials and real world clinical practice. So providing comparative outcomes in real world health settings will help clinicians and patients make better informed decisions. So one way to achieve this would be through registry-based or registry-embedded trials, which are prospective interventional studies that utilize data from at least one clinical trial to support the trial activities. So clinical registries are designed to measure and influence practice and policy through standardized data, and such registries can efficiently support clinical trials by extending their observational infrastructure to interventional studies. So in 2010, I think the TASTE trial, which used data from the Swedish Angiography and Angioplasty Registry for randomization, case recording, and follow-up in a comparative treatment study, was published. And to the best of our knowledge, this was probably one of the first studies that published this methodology. And since then, trials using clinical registries have definitely gained prominence. So given that background, the aim of our project was to develop a publicly available practice guide on the use of clinical quality registries as a platform for clinical trials. So this guide is designed for trialists, registry operators, clinicians, trial participants, health service providers, policymakers, and funders. So a broad scope of stakeholders, and the guide aims to enhance the understanding of which registries and interventions are ideal for registry-based clinical trials, cover the resources, probably the capacity and capability for conducting such trials, and also providing best practice methods, which also include some practical resources like decision trees and checklists along with the actual guide. So that was the aim for our project, and the development of that guide was informed by 3 main activities. So we began with a scoping review, which aimed to synthesize the relevant literature for this guide. And following this, we held a national multi-stakeholder meeting with experts, including clinical trial researchers, quality registry or other registry operators, clinicians. And the purpose of this meeting was to ensure collaboration in defining and developing the guide, and also to identify user needs. And finally, we also conducted in-depth semi-structured interviews with some key informants, and who were involved in planning, conducting, or analyzing data for registry-based trials. So we did these 3 different activities that helped in informing the development of the best practice guide. So I'll start off with the scoping review. So a search of the literature was conducted on the 12th of February, included text terms relating to both registries and trials, and the inclusion-exclusion criteria listed there on the slide. We kept the criteria quite broad at this stage because we didn't know what to expect, and at that time there weren't any published reviews on this topic. So we screened, 2 independent reviewers screened all the articles, with a 3rd reviewer involved to resolve any disagreements. So after an extensive screening process, which started out with over 2,000 studies at the start, we ended up with a total of 200 studies that were eligible for data extraction. Before moving on to the results from the scoping review, there was one challenge that we faced throughout this process, and something that had to be addressed at the start and also through the process was actually the definition of registry-based trials. So there wasn't a standardized definition within the literature. So for our scoping review and the project in general, we established certain criteria for a registry-based trial. So the criteria that we had defined was that it needs to involve a clinical registry, not necessarily a clinical quality registry, but definitely a clinical registry that is used for any part of the trial, be it recruitment or getting data on demographics or even follow-up. And additionally, the trial in question must be like a prospective intervention and not retrospective. So those were the key criteria that we sort of defined for a registry-based trials. So the next couple of slides, I'll present some results from our scoping review. I'm not going to present all of it because we extracted data from over 126 variables. And also I would like to acknowledge that the graphs that you will see in this section were created by our project manager, Dr. Shani Zazrin, and were originally presented at our national meeting in June last year. So as mentioned previously, the popularity of registry-based trials is definitely increasing, with the majority of papers being published after 2020. Of the 200 studies that were included, 152 were publications of actual registry-based trials, so studies, and they included, say, protocol, statistical plans, feasibility studies, and trial results. And the remaining 48 articles were narrative reviews or perspective pieces on this methodology. So the majority of registry-based trials have been conducted in Europe, maybe not too surprising, largely due to the robust national patient registers that are available there. So Swedish patient register and the Danish register as examples. The US and Australia followed in 2nd and 3rd place, and notably, there has been a significant increase in the number of studies being conducted in Australia, which is one of the key motivations behind our project. So registry-based trials, all the studies that we looked at, they were across specialties. They were using diverse trial designs, so including multi-arm and cluster randomized trials, exploring a range of interventions, so surgical procedures to drug device treatments to just standard of care comparison. And registry-based trials normally involve either just one or multiple registries. So based on the specific needs of the trials and also the characteristics of the registries, sometimes there were up to 6 registries used in one trial. It's also noteworthy that the majority of the studies that were included in our review collected additional data alongside the registry data. So it wasn't a trial conducted just using only the registry data. So turning to the registry characteristics, and this is just the information that were included in the publications. While the majority of the publications included details on the type of registry, it was particularly striking that the majority of the studies lacked detailed information about the registries that they were using the data from for clinical trials. So if we look at these orange bars on the graph, so they were basically, we had a lot of not reported in our data extraction form. So just some key observations from our scoping review. So firstly, the breadth of topics, trial types, intervention types, and registries being used for registry-based trials is quite extensive. So this diversity underscores the versatility and the wide applicability of registry-based trials across research, so medical research. Secondly, what we found was that the registry itself appears to be the limiting factor. So the characteristics and capabilities of the registry can significantly influence the feasibility and success of registry-based trials. And lastly, the reporting details, particularly about the registries, is often poor. And this lack of information can hinder transparency and reproducibility of the registry-based trials. So, yeah, a pretty extensive search of the literature, but also some hard points that we were able to include then in our guide. So following the scoping review, we held a national meeting, which was a hybrid event attended by 84 participants, with almost 46 attending in person and 38 joining online. And the meeting also included an external facilitator to guide the discussions. So the main objective for this meeting was to develop a shared understanding of the critical criteria and best practice elements needed for a registry-based trial. And the sessions included case study presentations from experts who have completed such registry-based trials in Australia. So they talked about what worked, what didn't work, and the lessons that they had learned through their studies. And then in the afternoon, there were 4 concurrent breakout sessions where we workshopped the critical criteria for a range of topics, including ethics, methodology, data analysis, and reporting. We also had a total of 19 interviews with people who had hands-on experience with conducting registry-based trials. So each interview lasted for about an hour, and all the data was analyzed using in vivo software. And the participants had expertise across all stages of the project. So it's right from the initial phase to data collection, monitoring, cleaning, analysis, and reporting. So this comprehensive involvement ensured that we gathered insights from individuals who were deeply familiar with every aspect of conducting a registry-based trial. So these were the different activities that we did leading up to the guide. And so the guide for registry-based trials consisted of 5 main parts that are listed here. So these 5 modules that form the guide are intended to support researchers aspiring to conduct registry-based trials by outlining aspects to consider and maybe questions to ask. So the first section, which is the background, provides an overview of registry-based trials and establishes a working definition for the purpose of this guide. So like I mentioned previously, defining a registry-based trial was particularly challenging. And so we included the insights from the national meeting, the interviews, and with collaborating with our investigators, there was a broad definition that's included in the first section. It also includes information on different types of registry-based trials, considers best suited research questions for registry-based trials and discusses the strengths and limitations of this methodology. The next section, deciding on a registry-based trial, offers guidance on whether this approach is suitable for a research question. So from this point onwards in the guide, considerations for trialists and registry operators are provided separately where appropriate. So for this section, for example, trialists, it addresses topics such as finding the right registry or building a relationship with the registry team, determining if it's appropriate methodology for your trial. And then for registry operator, it discusses, say, characteristics that support trials or determining if a trial is appropriate for a registry. The third part will provide details to support the design and conduct of registry-based trials, and it covers key considerations related to ethics, methodology, budget, and technology. So ethics would deal with issues around consent, data and site governance, participant withdrawal, conflicts of interest, and methodological considerations would include things such as how will the registry support the trial, or what aspects of the registry will the trial use, and how do you minimize bias and ways to manage data quality. So part 4 is analyzing and reporting a registry-based trial. So for analyzing data, it is actually very similar to traditional trials in the sense that it depends on the design phase decisions and must follow ethical standards to ensure participant safety and confidentiality. And when it comes to reporting, there would be considerations around reporting, particularly for registries having authorship and publication policies that trialists will have to follow. And additionally, it was highlighted in our scoping review about reporting. So the reporting, particularly about registry characteristics, was pretty poor in all of the publications. So this guide provides practical examples of how to apply the consort routine tool to reporting of registry-based trials. So consort routine is actually an extension of the consort statement, which was published in 2021. And it includes additional details on reporting of trials that use routinely collected data, such as registry data. And finally, the last section provides some considerations for funders, funders of registries and funders of clinical trials, but these would be very specific to registry-based trial situations. So some obvious considerations would be that the registry has ongoing funding, or at least funding for the duration of the trial. Or another thing to consider would be that the trial, the aspects of the trial that are being conducted by the registry, and that these would be funded by the trial and not funded by the registry. So so funding considerations for specifically registry-based trial projects would be included in this section. So that was just a quick snapshot of each of the 5 parts that make up the best practice guide. And for those of you who would like to know more or would like to access the guide, so this QR code will take you to the website for our project, which also includes the guide now. So the guide also, as I mentioned earlier, includes other components that I wanted to highlight here. So I've included this QR code on all of the subsequent slides. So even if you haven't had a chance to scan it, you can scan it at any time now. So the guide also provides sample quotes as illustrative examples of issues and challenges and the ways these have been addressed by other registry-based trials. So these quotes are mainly from the in-depth interviews that we've conducted. So these are just examples of quotes that are shown on this slide for sections 4 and 5. I won't read the quotes out loud, but I just wanted to highlight that throughout the guide, we have quotes such as these from people who have had practical experiences with conducting registry-based trials. The guide also includes implementation tools, and here's a screenshot of these tools. So the first screenshot is a project synopsis document that registry operators can use to assess the suitability of a trial for the registry. The screenshots in the middle are Excel-based checklists for trialists and for registry operators. So we have two separate ones, which actually provide a color-coded assessment of the registry trial fit. So more greens would mean that this methodology is suitable for the research question. And finally, we have a flow diagram or a decision tree for determining the feasibility of a registry-based trial. So these toolkits are also available on the website. So we would like to acknowledge that this guide was developed thanks to funding provided by the Australian Government Department of Health and Aged Care under the National Clinical Quality Registry Program. Next, I would like to acknowledge all the participants in the national meeting and the expert interviews, also extending thanks to the investigators and the other team members. And here's the link again, which is hosted on the school's website and is available for everyone to use. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Swana, for that really interesting presentation about development of sort of best practice there. We have quite a lot of time for questions here. It looks like the Q&A function is not appearing, certainly not appearing on my screen. So what we'll do, hopefully you will see a raise hand button at the bottom. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and then I'll just cycle through the questioners in turn. I'll start off though, just would you be able to state in general, I've had a little bit of experience with registry-based trials, with probably a largest registry-based trial was a 27,000 patient international trial in intensive care using the routinely collected mortality data there, and that was done at like about 1/100th of the cost of a regular randomized trial because of all the outcome measures were in the registry, and patients automatically enter the registry when they're admitted to intensive care. But what was missing was essentially adherence data, sort of supplementary data about what's happening during the course of the trial that wasn't collected within there, and that was very difficult to collect outside. It was outside of the registry, had to be collected sort of bespokely from each of the sites, and that was one of the major limitations of the trial, that we didn't have great adherence data. Could you sort of comment about sort of the major aspects when a registry is suitable for a trial, and sort of what sort of key information might be missing in a registry? I've got lots of follow-up questions from that, but I'll wait for others to come in. But sort of just basically about sort of that was one of your sections about determining if the registry is suitable for a trial. If you could sort of go into some of the elements of that.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. That's a great question. And I think, unfortunately, I do not have a straightforward answer. The main reason being that different registries have very different characteristics. And so, like you said, the registry that you used was a massive registry. And so data monitoring was a bit difficult. Whereas if you are looking at, say, an example from a rare diseases registry, where it's a smaller registry and you are able to actually do better data monitoring. So I think at the end of the day, we would have these key questions that we are sort of considering at the beginning, and that's how the guide has been sort of formatted. And then at the end of the day, I guess it's for the trial team and the registry team to sort of discuss on whether the cost benefit analysis of this project. So as you mentioned, the cost of doing a trial, so doing an actual trial versus doing a registry-based trial was so significantly different. So I think at the end of the day, you would sort of weigh those up and then decide on which ones to proceed. So the registry, so the guide has questions that you would consider at the initial stages for the registry characteristics and whether or not that would be applicable for something like your situation. So just to give another example, if the registry-based trial is comparing two standards of care, and if what you mentioned, the actual day-to-day, so what is being actually collected doesn't matter so much for your research question, then you would definitely go for something like this. Whereas if something were to sort of look at, what time a particular treatment was administered, and if you don't have that sort of finer details in your registry, then it would be hard for something to go ahead. So yeah, apologies, I don't know if I answered that right, but there is no straightforward answer at this stage. So
yeah, thanks. I know, I appreciate that there won't be a registry that will be, correspond absolutely perfectly to a trial. There'll always be something the registry doesn't have, and there's compromises to be made there. I hope people have their hands up, but unfortunately I'm unable to see it. So what we might do, we'll just work on a decorum system here. If you have a question, just please unmute and yell out. And if someone else is talking, please wait until they're done. Sorry about this, but our system's not behaving very well here. So anyone with questions, comments? Oops, thought I heard someone there. Please don't be shy. I'm sure someone has something. I'm just worried that people don't have access to unmute. So I'm going to pick on someone who's here and just get them. Oh, I'm just going to pick on you. Francesca Orsini, you there right now? You able to just say hello into your microphone? Someone say anything? Anyone want to just unmute and just even say hello? I'm just worried we haven't got any facility whatsoever. Oh boy. ACTA people, do you know what's happening here? Doesn't seem that anyone's got any facility to be asking any questions at all.
Andrew, there's a couple of people that have put their hands up. We're just trying to get them unmuted.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay. Oh, yeah, I can see Annie. Fantastic. I'm trying to unmute you, but we've got Annie, Fee, and Judith.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
Fee or Judith, I can see you're unmuted. Fantastic. Yeah. One of you, please go ahead. Who's ever just...
I have a question. We're setting up a registry and a clinical trial at the same time. And this might be too specific of a question, but in thinking about how the HREC submission has to work, do you think that an embedded clinical trial has to sit separately with its own separate ethics to the registry itself? Or do you, if you're kind of setting them up at the same time, could that sit within it?
Yeah, great question. I am going to refer you back to the guide. We actually do have a specific section for this, so definitely you can use that. But I think the short answer, though, is that as long as all of the aspects of the data collection would be, so you have to ensure that that's covered in your HREC. I think that would be the key, because often trials have different consent and stuff compared to registry. So you just have to double check on that. But we do have a section on that in the guide as well.
Thank you.
Was that Fee or Judith? Well, the other of you. So that was probably Fee, I would guess. Annie, now how did we unmute? I don't have capacity to unmute anyone. Someone an actor, are you able to unmute Annie? Yes.
No,
Go ahead, Annie.
I can unmute. I didn't have a question. I was just sending you the email that I thought I couldn't unmute myself.
Okay.
Sorry, I was listening, but I had to dive away. So although I'm
That's
interested,
fine.
I didn't actually get to hear the whole presentation. So I don't
Right.
understand anything
Okay. No,
right
thanks. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Annie. Judith?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I was just saying I can hear everything.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sure we got 30 people here. Anyone at all with a question? Okay, just going back to one of your early slides. You don't have to do that. There was this huge increase in the number of registry-based trials, but then I think in 2023 was identical almost, or a slight dip from 2022. And is that just a delay? I wasn't sure whether you were reporting on the year of publication or the year of the trial.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. It is the year of the trial, and we did our search Feb 2024. So I'm assuming this dip was mainly, due to late.
Yeah.
It was publication, not trial. And so just to highlight, so we had, of the 152 publications, we had 85 protocol that were published. So some of these were just the protocols, so they still have the study ongoing. So definitely those publications will come back as well. So, yeah.
And would you have any idea when you gave the figures of the, like, was it 70% are just straight two-arm randomized trials and 10% multi-arm trials, 10% cluster trials? Have any idea whether that matches sort of clinical trials in general?
That's a good question. We didn't look at that, but yeah, that's a good question. But yeah, it would be interesting to look if that's similar to actual trials. Yeah, thank you. It might highlight the use for this.
Theme in registry-based trials where, take some sort of a cancer registry where people receiving different sort of modalities of treatments, that there's potential for a sort of multi-arm trials or even factorial trials in there, and that so hopefully a greater percentage of sort of more innovative trial designs will emerge in trials within registries over time.
Definitely, yeah. I think we did speak to some people who've sort of designed platform trial. Yeah, I definitely think it would be easier to do more innovative trials when you already have existing platforms.
And just my final thing is, what's the next stage of your work from now?
So I think so for now we've just sort of the guides online, and it's open for, my apologies, I'm not sure. I think the share sort of went off. So it is available online, and we invite comments on this guide. So if we have a website and an email ID where people can comment and basically improve this document. So we're hoping that it would be like a living document, so we can keep updating it as and when, because it is a new space, and there would be things that we hadn't considered. So yeah.
How long has that been live so far?
Only since the start of the year. So we finished this project at the end of last year, and actually I presented at the ACTA conference, and just then we put it online. Yeah. So it's only been up for 2 months now.
Okay. Last call for anyone else with questions, comments. Okay then. Well, I think I'm run out of questions myself, so I think we'll draw this meeting to a close now. I believe there's going to be a little survey that's going to pop up when you exit the WebEx screen. So please do complete that. And our next Sting webinar is going to be announced pretty soon. We're going to have a number of Sting chat sessions coming up. We'll sort of prelude that. One of the first ones will be with Francesca Orsini, who was the ACTA Excellence in Trial Statistics Award winner from last year. We're going to have a little sort of Q&A with her and discuss what made the trial great, or what made the statistics in her trial great. So stay tuned for further announcements from ACTA about our Sting activities. So with that, we'll sign off, and thanks very much to Swama for your presentation today.
Thanks,
and
Andrew.
thanks to everyone for attending.